Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. The project I'm working on today for the house is trying to get the stone ready to go behind where the wood stove's going. We're gonna put stone on the wall, and the stone that I'm using is stone that was recovered from the original homestead house fireplace on this piece of property. Best we can figure, based on looking at deeds and land ownership stuff available through the county, the original homestead on this place that used this stuff in the fireplace would have been built sometime around the Civil War. I don't know if you watched the video where I filled in the pond that never held water. Well, that pond was just down the hill from where the original homestead was. We know it was there because we found foundation stones, and there's a huge old pecan tree in what would have been the front yard. We found stuff that leads us to believe that it was occupied for quite a while. We found, pieces of broken glass and pottery and different kitchen utensils and stuff like that. But anyway, this stuff is a quarried sandstone. I have no idea where it came from. The blocks are all 4 to 5 inches square, and they're rectangular in shape. And we didn't want to put something this thick on the wall behind the stove. So what I'm doing is breaking this stuff down so it's about 1 3/4, maybe 2 inches thick. I started out using the tile saw, and it was cutting it, but it didn't like it. And some of this stone is too thick to actually go through the saw. So I found that, a different method that I've used in the past, making, shaping rock, that's actually working pretty well, because since it is sandstone, it's stratified, so you can cut between the layers and cut it apart. Some of it's really crumbly from exposure to the weather and it's falling apart, but most of it seems to be working. So I thought you might find it interesting. I'll flip you around, get the air compressor turned back on, and you can see how I'm doing this. Doing it this way gives us an option. We can either clean the weathered side or flip it over and use the new solar shape. you can do this the really old school way, using a hammer and chisel. It's a heck of a lot slower. This actually works pretty well, and it's faster than using the tile saw, just because the tile saw is not big enough. But I think it's going to give us plenty of material to do our surround for our wood stove. And you know, I said I didn't want it that thick behind the stove, but the other reason is this is kind of a limited resource, and by doing this, I'm spreading it out. I'm getting, you know, 3-4 times as much material to do what we need to do as if I was using it full thickness. So anyway, this is the first step in that process. Okay, so what we're doing now is laying out where that rock that I was splitting the other day is going to go on the wall here behind the stove. To find that location, we went ahead and laid out the tile that's going to go under the stove, so we knew where the edges of that were going to fall. And now I've made marks on the floor, and I've taken my laser level and I've lined up the marks so we can get our mark on the wall. And we're going to take a chalk line and strike a line on that, and that gives us the outside edge of where that stone is going to go on the wall. Down there where that hits the floor. You got it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, now we can pick up this tile so we don't walk on it and break it, and then come over and make the other mark. Okay. Got it. Okay, go ahead and pop it. Oh, hold on. Now pop it. It's hard to see that red chalk under that red laser, huh? Okay, we might one more to do.
Okay.
If we're gonna put trim all the way around, we probably need to drop 6 inches off of that so that the rock will be down here.
Yeah.
So that's where our cards needs to go, or our scratch coat. And I need to foam that in. I need to look at the installation instructions for the stove and figure out where the air intake needs to go, and I need to cut that hole in the wall. And it is running low. Since this house is going to be so tight, we decided that we're going to install a fresh air kit on this stove. And what that's going to do for us is the combustion air will be pulled from outside rather than from inside the house. And it should prevent us from having backflow of the chimney gases into the house if we turn on an exhaust fan or something else, and it should give us a consistent burn in the stove because the air supply is not going to be restricted by the house being closed up. If you've ever been in a house where somebody turns on the bathroom fan or the kitchen exhaust and you see smoke start coming out and rolling up under the mantle on the fireplace, or rolls into the house when you open the door on the stove, or the stove starts burning less consistently, it's because it's too tight. You're pulling air back down the chimney and out the stove. So this should prevent that. And what I've got to do is get a hole through this block. This is a partial block, so I'm going to make the assumption this is the factory end. That means that there should be 3 inches of concrete over here, 3 inches of concrete down here, then we step over 12 inches, and there'll be 6 inches of concrete here, same thing in the middle. So right in here, I should be able to get a hole all the way through this without hitting concrete. The air intake for this stove is 3 inches. I'm going to put a 3.5 inch hole through this wall to put the tube through. So in theory, if I come over 3 inches and up 3 inches, I should be able to put a hole in here. We'll see, because they could have, since this is in a corner, you know, notched out, taken out some of the foam to make it a more solid structure. I don't know. So if we go in 3.5, and then we go up 3.5, and use that as our outside limit of the hole, we should be able to get through this wall with minimal fight. just bottomed my drill out. So now, because this thing is 11 inches thick, I need to get a bit long enough to get all the way through the wall to give me a center point on the outside to then drill from the outside in. And I see daylight. And there's our center hole. Right. And there's our hole through the wall into the house. Yay! Okay, I didn't figure y'all wanted to watch me struggling with that and making a mess, but I found a more efficient way to do this. It is probably not the professional mason way, because if you remember from the block laying videos, I am not a professional mason. However, I found that if you use this margin trowel or gauging trowel rather, and load up your trowel and then smooth it on, it's a lot cleaner and it seems to be a lot more efficient. I don't know. I mean, I've got a hawk. I could try working off of that, but then I got something else that when it don't work, I got to clean it up. So this is working, and it's working better than it was just trying to use this gauging trowel or work straight out of the bucket onto the wall. So, and just like with the block, I found out too, you want to make this a little wetter than you think you ought to. But loading up the trowel and then just smoothing it on seems to be working a lot better. And I'm kind of doing it like with block, breaking this edge down to give it a little suction and get it to stick to the trowel, and it seems to be working pretty well. And this little Marshalltown 1/4 by 1/2 square and round notch trowel, this thing's a piece of crap. Don't buy one. This came from some auction stuff that we bought, and this thing's terrible. I figure I probably ought to be doing 1/2 by 1/2, but this is what I got. I didn't want to go to town and get something different for the time being.
I don't know if y'all can tell it from that camera angle. The way the light is in here, I don't know if I can get you a better angle. But as I'm going up and the mortar's coming off of the trowel, I'm letting the trowel turn in my hand and flatten out as it goes up the wall to try to keep a consistent amount now. I just lifted while it was too flat and suctioned it off the wall. But anyway, I'm letting it as I'm going up the wall. I start out at a steeper angle, and as I'm going up and the mortar's coming off, letting it rotate down to keep it flowing off of the edge of the trowel. And I'm not shooting for smooth on this. I'm shooting for a consistent coating. Except for putting rock on it, it's not, you know, not imperative that it be perfectly flat. This may be an unnecessary step, but the reason I'm using the notch trowel is to give a little bit of tooth to that scratch coat so that it resists any kind of vertical movement of the mortar and the rock when we adhere it to it. You'll see in upcoming videos when I'm doing the rock work on the outside of the house, we didn't do this step, but it's because everything was full bed mortar, so I didn't have to be concerned with movement of the block before, or the rock rather, on the block before it started setting up. And just like with the block, I had to figure out the hard way that I was making the mortar too dry to start with. But I think this will work for giving us some tooth for the rock to stick to. So. Yay. Okay, now that my lovely assistant, Miss Behave, has laid this stuff out in a pattern we think we're going to use, we're going to start getting this stuff on the wall. I'm going to begin with this corner section over here where I've got to make these cuts to get around the air intake for the stove and the receptacle. And then, because we know we've got a fixed point that we don't want this to exceed on the edges, we're going to lay up there, lay up this corner, lay up here, and then we'll start filling out in the middle so that our cuts that we're going to have to make adjustments to the size of the stone are happening in the middle of the pattern rather than on the edges. So, here we go! Yay!
So, if we're doing this one, do you want me to go ahead and square it off?
Well, actually hand it to me, and that notched corner may fit perfect where this hole is. Oh, look at there, pretty close. By the time we get a bit of mortar under it, we'll be good to go.
All right.
Do you want to hand me that small yellow level out of that bucket? Okay, we need the pieces going this way.
So, we'll start with this one, this course here.
Will you go get me that orange handled hammer out of the bucket on the front porch?
Here's the. Me pushing back behind you if you need it.
Okay. Alrighty. Gotta do a little bit better coverage on the back. Okay. You see the difference in our level line here where we need to end up over there?
Okay. Well, that's the third course thing, and so now we can
We
put
can
a
use to
strip
do
of
some
skinnier.
skinny ones.
Or, honey, just continue on up and we'll just use that line as a guide. It doesn't have to meet right. Oh, yes, it does, because, yeah.
'Cause
Okay,
it goes under
I got
the
you.
window.
I got you. Yeah. Yeah, I got you.
What I'm doing here is adjusting the laser level to the next course. We used the laser line as we went up the wall to set the top edge of each course of rock, and then left the mortar gaps, kind of natural based on however the rock was shaped where the two pieces met. But it gave us a much more visually consistent line for each course as we went up the wall. All right, to save the pain and aggravation when it comes time to put the ceiling in of having to scribe around every single one of these rocks on the top course, what I've decided to do is use the laser to get our next to the last course at the same height across the top, as close as we can. And then I'm gonna allow a little over 3/4 of an inch, which is the thickness of the ceiling material we're gonna use, between the last course and the ceiling. So what that means is I'm gonna have to figure out kind of what the average is of height that we need for that last course, and then I'm gonna run that stuff through the tile saw to cut it down, give us a flat face on the top that goes against the ceiling. And if we don't like the way it looks once the ceiling's up, we may go ahead, and caulk that joint or something to make it look better. But I think as tight as it's going to be, the shadow line should blend in with the mortar through the rest of the wall when we get this grouted in. Everything's an experiment. That's got us at 13/16 off of this lathing that goes across here. So with 3/4 sealing material, we should have plenty of clearance to get that material in. So now I need to know how thick I can make my rocks. And it looks like about 2 inches to allow for a mortar joint. So yep, about 2 inches. So I'm gonna go cut all of these last rocks and then we'll start putting them in. Apparently I got in a little bit of a hurry and forgot to turn the camera back on. Okay, time to clean up this mess in the floor. Let this cure a little while, and then we'll come back and start grouting it. And we're gonna try something new, a grout bag that I've never used before, so hopefully it'll work out. Okay, this is a grout bag. The only place I could find one locally was at Home Depot. I've never used one. I've actually never put up stone in this fashion before. Everything I've done has been full bed, mortar, you know, stonework. So what I'm gonna do here is fill this thing up and we're gonna give it a try. The minimal research I've done on this thing, they say make sure and wet your bag down before you put any mortar in it. And you want your mortar to be the consistency of peanut butter. So for those of you who are not from the United States and may be watching this, maybe Nutella, although that's a little sticky. I think this mortar still may be a little dry, but I didn't want to get it too wet. We're going to try this and see how it works. But the idea is that you treat it just like a piping bag for decorating cakes. You put your mortar in, and then you twist it up and squeeze it out. And that's showing me right there that this is still too dry. So we're gonna go put some more water in it and then I'll be back and we'll try it again. All right. I guess I like my peanut butter a little thicker and chunkier than most people. Well, that still ain't coming out of there real easy. I'll open this up just a little bit and see how that goes. Huh. I'm not sure I'm gonna like this. Well, nothing to it but to do it. Is that hole still too small? This definitely ain't like icing a cake, I can tell you that. I don't know if it's the kind of mortar I'm using or if it's still not wet enough. But it seems like the sand is plugging it up. Well, let's make it a little wetter and see what happens. Alright, I'm pretty sure the people will tell you that you want this the consistency of peanut butter. Don't eat much peanut butter, or if they do, it's about 125 degrees. To get this to come out of this bag, I'd consider this to be more the consistency of yogurt or sour cream or something. Alright, now the question question is this gonna even stay in the dang mortar joint? Thought was this was going to be easier than trying to bed this stuff in and tool the joints and everything at the same time. I'm not sure that's the case. Because the sand in this mortar seems to be plugging up this little tip. And if I make it any wetter, I'm not sure it'll even stay in the bag. I'm not sure I like this. But you gotta twist it and squeeze it and flex the tip to keep it floating. I might not have enough grip to do this. Whew. See, and you get a blockage, and then it does that. See where this stuff's going to have to set up quite a while to get it to where it'll tool. See, it doesn't flow smoothly. It comes out in spurts. Let's try it with a little less and see if that works any better. See, it goes fine for a little bit and then it just starts plugging up. Working better than it was. So maybe that's part of the secret is don't put so much in there. Well, crap, I figured this was going to be the fast part. All right, after much frustration with this grout bag thing yesterday, I did some research that I should have done in the beginning. And what I found out is that it was kind of a combination of things. One, my technique, but two, I was using pre-mixed Quickcrete Type S mortar. And the aggregate in it is a little big and there's a lot of it. So the solution that I found, which seems to work, is to add 2 brick trowels, you know, big 9-inch trowels, 2 trowels loaded with Portland cement to the mix to richen it up, and it seems to flow pretty good. I just tested squirting some in the bucket after making this mix up. The other thing, as I suspected based on the way it was behaving, I was putting too much mortar in to begin with. I did have it correct that you have to frequently rinse the bag out. I did have it correct that when these things come from the factory, the nozzle's a little small, so you've got to open it up. But it is flowing much better with the addition of that Portland. So hopefully we can get this done today. And I got a different bag since I blew the side out of that one I was using yesterday. But this is working much better than it was yesterday. This is more what I expected it was going to be like, rather than that mess that I had yesterday. Oh yeah, much more controllable, more accurate in the placement. It's not clogging up and spurting everywhere. Okay, now that this is working, I retract some of my negative comments from yesterday. Because when it flows well, it's actually pretty accurate. And I can tell I'm getting a complete fill in these joints, because it's not just spurting out all crazy. And today, this is much more like decorating a cake. It's kind of crazy how the simplest little bit of knowledge can make your life so much less frustrating. Now, one thing the guy that I watched said about adding the Portland to the mix is it makes it more slippery, so it comes out of the bag easier, but it also makes it a hotter mix, so your joints will tend to set up faster. Of course, he was doing the outside of a house with stone like this. And he said, you definitely don't want to get too far ahead of yourself before you start striking the joint, because it will go off quickly and get too hard to work. Oh yeah, this is so much better than yesterday. It's almost fun. And I would say that with the Portland added to it, the consistency today is more what I would consider to be peanut butter. So some useful tool tips. For doing all of the block work that I've done on this house, all the rock work, doing the rock work at our last house, I have had really, really good luck out of these Harbor Freight Hardy brand rubberized, or I don't know, maybe neoprene palm gloves. They seem to actually hold up pretty well, and they're like $1.79 a pair. I've had really good luck out of them. And the bag that I was using yesterday was a QEP brand. I got it at Home Depot because that's the only thing they had on the shelf. And when I went back this morning to get Portland to put in this stuff, they had some Anvil brand bags. The QEP stuff was back, or QEP bag, it was back in the tile section. And they had this anvil bag over in the concrete section. And this actually seems to be a better bag than that QEP. I'm gonna make the assumption that the QEP is a little lighter weight because it was back in the tile section. It just feels lighter. This is a little bit heavier feeling canvas, and the tip is thicker rubberized coating, so it holds its shape a little better. I cut it open to 5/16, 3/8 diameter, but it's nice because it stays a little flat, so you can get into narrower joints, or it opens up for wider joints if you turn it vertical. All right, the mix ratio that seems to be working with this bag is a half of an 80-pound bag of this Type S mortar. I start out with 2.5 quarts of water and add 2 trowels of Portland cement to it. About like that. It's one of the big brick trowels or block trowels. That's not good. I'm just mixing it up with one of these big egg beater mixers. But I had to go get a bigger drill because my Makita was not cutting it. Okay, that's obviously way too dry. So I'm gonna add about a half a quart to it to start. And then I'll probably end up doing that again. I do not think it's going to take a half a quart. Now we'll let that sit for about 5 minutes, and then I'll mix it again inside. I may have to add a little bit more water to it, but you need to wait. All right, it's been 5 minutes. I'm gonna give this a stir here. It's a little dry. Okay, I don't know how much you're gonna be able to tell from the video, but this is the consistency that seems to be working pretty well in that bag. You know, it's a little runny. It still sticks to the trowel. Well, see, it kind of starts dropping off, but it's, you know, all I can say is if you want to try it, you're just going to have to experiment. Okay, there were some places up here where I figured I was going to need to come back and fill in because they were low. Did you see any like that?
I didn't see any here. There's some on this side.
Well, I did fill in some earlier today. Are there still more?
Well, there was one like here, but I went ahead and filled it. And then I decided I could live with the others.
Yay!
I mean, this is kind of deep right here.
Is it, or is that just a shadow line that gives it character? Well, I tried to be more conscientious about filling it today, since this thing's actually functioning.
And because, yeah.
I was fighting the job and not the tool. I'm going through a bag of this stuff now about 10 times faster than I did yesterday. Now that this mortar is in the joints and it's set up a little bit, the first step in the tooling process is using a tuck pointer, or some people call it a pointing trowel, and going in and compressing these joints. And once that's done, my wife's coming behind me. You saw in this earlier part of this section, using the same tools and a couple other tools and scraping those joints back so they're a little recessed, and then using a damp sponge and a brush to finish cleaning up the joints. What is it?
Hey.
I'll take the heavy part.
Yeah,
I think you are, Jimmy.
that's my first attempt ever at laying tiles.
So you're saying it's not on us?
All right, folks, I think that's going to wrap this video up for today. Thank you for watching, and y'all have a good day.